Hello, I'm Phil Villela, Chief Scientist and co-founder of LogRhythm. I'd like to thank you for attending Rhythm World Security Conference and welcome you to the SIEM track. The sessions in this track will teach you to use the latest features, SIEM best practices, troubleshooting tips, and much more. Whether you're a new or longtime customer, you'll learn something to enhance your usage of the next-gen SIEM platform. Once the session is over, check out other related presentations by clicking on the recommended sessions at the right of the video player. Now watch a quick message from one of our sponsors and enjoy the session.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Rhythm World Security Conference. We're doing online this year due to the coronavirus pandemic we're all in the middle of. I hope everyone's friends and loved ones are safe and sound with the rather challenging circumstances we're all living under. And I appreciate you taking the time to attend the SAM Service and Best Practices to Keep Your SIM Healthy session. This will be presented by Ashley Howard and myself, Brian Stern. And let's get started here. Ashley, take it away.
Thanks, Brian. Before we dive in, I would like to go over what our agenda for the day is. And first, you will learn a little bit about myself and Brian, what a SAM is, the pillars of our service, a diagnostics tool overview, a demo of the diagnostics tool, Q&A, and thank you. So, hi everyone, my name is Ashley Howard, and I want to tell you how I became the SAM I am. I never planned on getting into IT. I studied German and film at the Harvard of the Midwest, the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, with the plan of getting into the film industry. This experience was unforgettable, and I even studied and worked abroad. Jawohl. Fast forward to 2 weeks before graduation, I got a call that General Motors wanted to hire me as bilingual tech support for their global service desk. This ignited a new passion for me, which is IT and helping people. Through this experience, I realized I could really make a difference with a new career path. I mean, have you guys seen the show Mr. Robot? I wanted to be like Elliot with his brilliance in the industry. So in October 2015, I decided to move to Boulder, Colorado because I knew it would give me more opportunity in the IT industry. It was a big move as I had never been out west and I didn't know anyone here. But it all worked out as I landed my first job at a mental health organization in their IT department. And this experience ignited yet another passion, which is cybersecurity and healthcare. Since healthcare affects all of us, I wanted to pursue a way in which I could protect our sensitive health information. So in August of 2016, I started my Master of Science with a focus in healthcare at the University of Denver. Working full-time while going to school full-time was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do, but it is something I take great pride in. In April 2017, I started working in LogRhythm in their support department, as I knew this was the company to be in if I wanted to gain experience in cybersecurity. I was right. In August of 2018, I completed my Master of Science, and in November of 2018, I was promoted to advanced support, and I really enjoyed the mentoring and other responsibilities this role gave me. And in January of 2020, I transitioned to the co-pilot SAM role, so this is how I became the SAM I am. Now, back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Ashley. Well, as you can tell from my voice, I'm originally from the Northeast. And I went to school in the mid-1990s when the information technology we know of today, that is in fact saving our society as we know it, was just coming into fruition. I attended the State University of New York at New Paltz, a very small liberal arts college 80 miles north of New York City. And when I attended there, I remember when Windows 95 was the biggest product launch in history, computer people going crazy over something called Pentium processors, and there was this new thing called the internet that a lot of people were taking notice of. So I attended college at a critical crossroads in the development of our industry. I graduated my bachelor's in psychology in 1996. Well, about 3 years later, like a lot of people, I decided to make a career change. So in 1999, I went back for my master's in computer science, information systems from Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York, another small liberal arts college 80 miles north of New York City. In other words, my college years were spent in the mid-Hudson Valley of upstate New York, and I graduated with this degree in 2002. And this was followed by a career in IT that spanned 15 years. But there was, and mostly in support roles, but there was one position in particular I remember fondly. And that's when I worked for 3 years as an adjunct college professor teaching A+ computer hardware at Palm Beach State College in Southeast Florida. And I did this 1 or 2 nights a week just to make a little extra money. And what I remember completely was the knowledge transfer and the mentoring relationships I had with my students, as well as the exhilaration of doing presentations. It influenced me profoundly, and it's something I brought into my current job. A couple of years later, I moved to Colorado in 2015, and in July of 2016, I started at LogRhythm in their support department, and it was here that I first gained exposure to SIEM technology, and when I first got my foot in the door in cybersecurity. 2 years later, I transitioned to the co-pilot SAM role that I'm currently in. In fact, this month is my 2-year anniversary. I started in September of 2018, and I've been here ever since. It's a job that I enjoy doing very much, one I like to think I have a knack for, and it's with a very exciting company. It treats their employees very nicely, so I'm very happy to be here. Now, on to more important matters. What is a SAM? Well, a SAM stands for Support Account Manager. And this is a person who works in the professional services department who has to put on a lot of different hats for the customers. And we're just going to do a brief outline of that here. The first one is your guide and resource to the LogRhythm SIEM and inside services. This is your go-to person for everything LogRhythm related and all the inside services and departments that come with it. We also assist with preventive maintenance and administration of the SIEM. A SAM is an expert in the SIEM software, and they can use their expertise to do things like optimize the system, maintain the SIEM, and avoid issues. Another very big part of this service is knowledge transfer and personalized training based on customer environment and goals. LogRhythm University, the training department here at the company, does an excellent job training people in the global aspects of the system. I strongly recommend everyone take the admin and analytic training class that they offer. But there are some customers may need more personalized training based on things like the size of their deployment, corporate culture, the industry they're in, and we can provide this type of one-on-one training. Another huge part of this service is where we actively, in fact, the entire title of the service is named after it, is where we actively monitor and assist with support issues on behalf of the customer for quicker resolution and escalate issues where needed. A SAM is constantly monitoring support tickets, whether they're being put in by the SAM or by the customer themselves, to make sure that a lot of traction is being given to get a quick resolution. We can do things like add a note in the ticket to let the support engineer know where we think the issue might be, an itemized list of all the different troubleshooting steps that have been taken, attaching log files, and even giving detailed description of the customer's environment. Worst case scenario, we can always escalate an issue, and this is where we basically formally get a lot of eyes on the ticket. We usually do this in critical cases or system downs. Thankfully, I've not had to do that very often. And how do we coordinate all this? We coordinate all of this through bi-weekly WebEx meetings to assist with tasks such as SIEM administration, platform optimization, short-term and long-term SIEM goals, and health checks. What you have there is an itemized list of all the tasks that a SAM can perform, and we meet with our customers once every 2 weeks. We'll elaborate a little bit more on this in a few minutes. And how do we communicate all this? We communicate all this through documentation and tracking of goal progression and support case status through a monthly SAM report. Our customers receive a report once a month that outlines or details the status of the service. This includes information like an overview of the most recent support tickets, the progress on the goals that we've established, and even minutes of the bi-weekly meetings. And we deliver this once a month so they can deliver it to their upper management and justify the cost of the service. Now that I've done is I've outlined this, just giving you the bare bones of the service. Now we're going to turn our attention to getting a little more in depth into this.
Thanks for explaining what a SAM is for us, Brian. Now I will show you all the main pillars of the SAM service. We have preventive SIM care, support case assistance or overview, technical point of contact, issue deflection, and SIM administration advancement. Over the next couple of slides, we will elaborate on each. So first, I would like to say the key word in our role is support. So now I'd like to further explain what that means in terms of what the service offers. First, your SAM does regular support case review to make sure steady progress is being made towards solution. In other words, we are always checking on support cases and monitoring movement. We also assist support engineers with environmental background, additional information, and recommendations to speed up resolution. Whether you submit this case or your SAM submits it on your behalf, we keep our eyes on it. And since we are able to deeply dive into your environment, we can provide very specific information to the support team that assists in the process of case resolution. Information like version of the product, is this an XM or distributed? How many Linux DXs do you have? And further information found by analyzing your logs. Your SAM also monitors progress on cases and updates you as needed. You can always feel free to contact your SAM via email if you have any questions on support cases or if you feel you aren't getting a quick enough response. And that brings me to the final point here. We can escalate cases where needed, especially when a critical issue is involved. This can be as simple as tapping that support engineer on the shoulder or speaking directly to a support manager. And although this is pretty rare, we may have to occasionally get support management involved to open a formal escalation if the problem is severe enough, something like a system down or, database corruption, anything major. So now I will go over another pillar of our service. And here we have issue deflection. What does that mean exactly? With this, we perform regular platform reviews to maintain system health. We have a tool and our deep knowledge of the product that allows us to continuously comb through your environment to make sure your SIM is healthy, and this way we proactively prevent issues. And we're going to give you a little taste of this later in the presentation. Your SAM also analyzes your environment against known issues. And this is especially true for later versions of the software. And it can even clue us into possible issues of which engineering must be made aware. And finally, your SAM does review of your LogRhythm supplied hardware to ensure there are no issues from that standpoint. And we do this by utilizing Dell tools and getting Dell involved on the phone when we need to. Many of you, however, might use your own hardware or virtual environments, but we are still happy to help where we can, of course.
Another very big aspect of this service is preventive SIM care. We got a few ways we can do this. One of them is to observe key metrics and tune as needed for optimal performance. There are certain key areas in the software that a SAM can look at to determine and make recommendations to optimize the system, maintain the system, or avoid issues. Very good examples of this would be hard drive space, what logs to index, what not to index, items of that nature. We also have the ability to analyze logs from all the major components and address issues as needed. We have a tool that can actually collect all the logs from all the major components and compress them into one convenient file. In addition, it has the ability to separate out the error messages and the warning messages, so we can take a look and say, is there something going on here? We got an issue brewing here. Is there something we're concerned about? The issue deflection Ashley alluded to earlier. And finally, we proactively review the SIM software and the LogRhythm deployed hardware and adjust settings and facilitate changes when applicable. The key here is we try not to be reactive. We always try to get ahead of major issues, and we try to be as proactive as we can possibly be. Then there is one part of this service that I myself absolutely love, and that is a SAM as a technical point of contact. And there's a couple of ways we can do this. We can do this by being a technical resource to assist with recommendations and suggestions to optimize the performance of the SIM based on customers' environment and goals. We give you the white glove treatment. And how do we do this? We do this by being a communication point for all the different internal LogRhythm services, and to coordinate the facilitation communication between different LogRhythm resources. The SIEM is a very big piece of software with a lot of moving parts to it. The LogRhythm is I'm hoping I'm getting this right here, a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant in the SIEM category, and has been for 7 years running. You got a very big piece of software here, and a lot of services that go with it. We can help you navigate that. Let's say you have a custom log source you need to have built. We can get in touch with project management and have a schedule professional services hours for you. Another idea could be, if let's say you want to have a new employee and you want to have them trained in the SIEM, we can get in touch with the training department to have them scheduled for the admin and analytic training classes I alluded to earlier at a time that's convenient for them. And this frees you up to do other more important items. I don't know, I like to think of the SAM as maybe a member of the security operations team. Remember, a few weeks ago, I had a customer whose entire Sonic wall system went down a few days prior. Very big issue, took up a lot of the time. They were very frustrated. And I pointed out the silent log source feature. And we looked at it, and we basically enabled it on all the Sonic wall log sources. We set it to error out after 10 minutes, and then we enabled the alarm. A few days later, the customer was very happy. They were getting proactive notifications if their firewall system was even muted for the fewest amount of minutes. They were pleased. I was happy. I don't know. I felt like a member of their team. It was a good feeling.
And the final pillar is what we call SIEM administration advancement. What this consists of is bi-weekly 1-hour sessions. We meet once every 2 weeks for an hour. During the off weeks, your SAM is available to you for any questions, and we will supply critical updates as needed. If there are no new questions, your SAM will likely be researching and continuing to work on requests you may have. Like Brian said, your SAM is also your technical resource for knowledge transfer and best practices. Think of us as your personal trainer on the product. Again, you can email your SAM at any time and expect a speedy response. And to elaborate a little further on this point, we assist with SIEM operational tasks, as in we are your resource for your how-to questions, whatever they may be, ask us. And we are able to do this as we have a key understanding of your environment and company needs. Since you speak with your SAM on a bi-weekly basis, you don't have to keep repeating what kind of challenges you face like you do when you call your cable provider. We have that by building a strong natural rapport with you, and by being one of the first to know of any environmental changes. This is another way you can think of your SAM as a member of your team. So this concludes the pillars of our service, and now I want to show you the tool that I mentioned earlier. And this is how we check the health of your SIEM, and this is by using the LogRhythm diagnostics tool. As you can see here, this tool is installed on your machine, and I will get into the details of that in just a second. The great thing about this tool is it passively collects files and data in a read-only manner and does not make any changes to your environment. And this makes it quick and seamless to understand how your system is doing overall. And the tool is currently available for deployments of 7.3 and higher. So as you can see here, when you first open up the tool, you get the overview page, and the overview page gives you kind of all the basics of your environment, version, KB version, things like that. And then on the left-hand side are all of your major components. And we will go over some of these in just a minute. But I do want to let you know that this isn't the only way a SAM can verify the health of your system. And it's also a tool you can use yourself as well. And with the help of your SAM, we will be able to guide you on how to best use this tool.
As some of you know, there is one platform manager per deployment that governs and controls the entire software system. And there's two windows on the platform manager tab that I think are of particular importance. One of them is service status, which displays what services are running and which ones are not. I like to think of this as a very quick solution to a major problem. So let's say you're noticing you haven't been receiving your alarm notifications for the past 2 days. For the past week now, you come into the office and you're not receiving your morning report. You can go into this window and take a look and say, the alarming and response manager is stopped. The job manager is not running. Go into services.msc, turn them back on, and within a few hours, the situation is resolved. You're noticing the alarm notifications are coming through. You come in the morning, and there's your weekly report waiting in your inbox. So this is it's always best practice to take a look through this window and make sure all the critical services are running. It's low-hanging fruit. And the other window I always like to look at is SQL job history, which shows if SQL maintenance jobs are running successfully or not. The platform manager is made of a series of databases that contain information such as alarms, events, cases, in fact, the entire configuration of the SIEM. And there's a series of maintenance jobs that are run daily on the weekdays and on weekends to maintain the health of these databases. And it's always good practice to just go scroll through the list of the most recent SQL jobs or the tasks and steps, and make sure they all say success. This means you can prevent issues such as database corruption, making sure there's sufficient space on the database file, and making sure that backups are readily available in case of a disaster. And then there is the the data processors tab. And there is one window in particular that I think is of critical importance, and that is the spool file information. And this basically reflects if there is a processing issue and where the data is stuck. This window reflects the mediator on it reflects the state directory on the mediator. And it is every health check I do, I always check to make sure that this is clear of log. I do this for every health check. With the exception of the bottom two directories, all of these directories here should be, every one of them, the number of files should never be significantly over 0. Because what happens is this area is where all the logs that the mediator is finished with goes to. And it's usually there for a split second, and it's imperceptible before it gets transmitted to the downstream databases and services. So every one of these directories should always indicate 0. If not, it means that there is a processing problem. It means that there are logs, messages stuck in the mediator, and you have to begin troubleshooting how to get them out of there and get transmitted downstream.
Next, I'd like to cover the Data Indexers tab. And I want to point out from here what I find crucial, and that is first and foremost, %disk used. In our VMs, Elasticsearch lives on the C drive, so in this picture here, the C drive is the one that is the most utilized. But in your environment, Elasticsearch will be on the D drive by default, so that's the drive you will want to monitor. Elasticsearch data represents how many live indices you have. In other words, how many days of live logs do you have that you can run investigations against or reports against? Depending on the size of your drive and what your TTL is set to or time to live, you might notice the bar for your D drive increase. If that bar reaches 80% utilization, the DX will struggle to maintain its indices, and this is a limitation set by Elasticsearch. So you want to keep the % of disk used as far below 80% as possible, but still keep the number of indices required for investigative and auditing purposes. You will have to find a balance, and this is something that will likely fluctuate as you onboard new log sources or have any other environmental changes. And finally, if you ask anyone at LogRhythm what one of the most difficult components to implement is, they will likely say AIE or AI Engine. AIE rules can get very detailed and complex quick, but luckily the component is pretty easy to examine for issues. So out of this section, I first like to look at the enabled AIE rules. This section gives a quick display of which rules you have enabled, their status, and when the rule was last modified. And this can be useful as multiple users can create and edit rules, so you can easily gain insight as to what has been created and when in your environment. The next section I'd like to highlight is the spool file information, and this shows how those enabled rules are performing. If there is an issue, files will spool to what we call the AIE data folder or DAT files, and you might notice that there are no new AIE rules firing when you know there should be some. The number represented under data files there won't be a 0, and any number over that represents an AIE event that should have fired an alarm. And now we will be going through our diagnostic tool demo.
Okay, when I open up the diagnostic tool here, I want to bring to your attention the column here on the left-hand side. These series of tabs correspond to different components in the SIEM, but also have certain little features that are very useful in the tool here. Well, we're going to start with the overview tab, which is just what it says it is. It's an overview, a very wide-angle view of the system. Starts out by giving you basic information on your SIEM. Version number, KB version, things like that. We've got a deployment messages per second graph here, which shows you the average of the last 30 days. And usually there's curves and peaks here, but we're kind of in a testing environment, so we're just trying to make do. We've got here the actual value, the actual amount of logs that are being processed per second should never be significantly above license, and also never should be above max peak or max sustained, because this could cause a lot of spooled up logs, data processing problems. And now we go down here and we have all the components listed here, and it gives some very basic information. But what's the first thing you notice? The log level, it says verbose. As a whole, you try to avoid putting the log levels into verbose or debug. It tends to cause issues where it takes up a lot of hard drive space and it generates logs that have too much information. Always best to put them in info, warning, or error mode. And this is always a good way to look to see, hey, maybe to see if any one of these are in that mode. Only put it in verbose or debug if a support department tells you to, or you're troubleshooting something. Then you have over here the Platform Manager tab, and this gives you a wealth of information. We'll go over percent disk used and disk status later on. The enabled GLPRs is a list of all, of course, the enabled GLPRs. What I like is it's not listing disabled ones, so you have to sort through these. And it gives you a very quick rundown of your processing priorities. We got enabled alarm rules, enabled KB modules, diagnostic alarms, but the one I really like, of course, is SQL job history. And all the jobs are listed here. They're sorted by run date, so of course you want to keep the most recent ones on the top. You can scroll through here to see if every one of them are running successfully. If any of them weren't, you'd see a big red fail, and it would tell you what step it failed at. And then it would indicate there's a problem with the jobs finishing successfully and maintaining the databases. So it's always good to peruse through the most recent ones. We also have here some, I would like to call it asset control or asset inventory windows. One of them is pending system monitors and pending log sources. And here you have a list of them, and you can determine whether you want to reject them or do you want to associate / accept them. We also have a list of quiet system monitors and quiet log sources. And here, it's kind of like where you're looking. If you can tell if should a system monitor be connecting, should a log source be collecting. You can go through these lists, and if you notice that the log source of system monitors that haven't updated their heartbeat or their last log message data time, take a look and see, has this been taken offline? Has it been deprovisioned? If it has, you can retire them. If they haven't, then it's a clue that there may be some sort of a collection problem in the case of a log source, connection problem in case of a system monitor, and you have to research it further. And we have, of course, service status. Service status, what's the first thing you notice here? A big red stop. This is for the LogRhythm Echo service. It's just something I use to for use case for testing purposes. But it's of course standing out. But if you go down here, if any one of these, if the job manager or the alarming and response manager is in that stop state, be an excellent idea to go into services.msc and start them back up, and it fixes a very big problem very quickly. And then there is the data processors tab. And there is, of course, one window that I think is critical to examine on a regular basis. That is spool file information. Think of the SIEM as a massive plumbing system. And every one of these listed here, every one of these directories is like a pipe in the system. And with the exception of these bottom two, if any one of these, the number of files ever indicates anything significantly higher than 0, it means you have some sort of a clog on the pipe. You know which pipe it is. Now it's a question of how to get it unclogged. In this case, it's trying to find a way to get the logs that are stuck in the mediator to get transmitted to downstream databases and services. And you would want to work with your SAM or the support department to get this fixed. And now we're going to move on to data indexers.
Okay, so like I mentioned in my portion of the tool a few minutes ago, in the data indexer section, I like to take a look at the percent disk use to ensure we don't reach 80%. And in your environment, again, you will want to monitor your D drive. It'll look similar to how our C drive looks. In our testing environment, the Elasticsearch data lives on C, so that's why it looks that way. But in your environment, your D drive will look very similar to that. And we just want to make sure we don't reach 80% utilization, because that will mean your data indexer will not function properly. The service status section, a few ways down, I like this section because it shows all of the data indexer services that are running. And if we scroll down a little bit, we'll see all of the microservices that are part of the DX. And because there are so many of those, it can be a little tedious to keep track of what's running and what's not. So I like looking at the diagnostics tool to keep track of what services are running. If you have one of those stopped, then that'll mean your DX won't function properly, and it can cause a lot of issues. So this is just a quick and easy way to resolve a lot of issues. Next, I would like to cover AI engines. And in this section, I always look at the enabled AIE rules. I like this as it shows the name of the rule, the status, if that rule is enabled or not, and then alarm enabled. If the alarm portion of the rule is enabled, it'll say true or false. And then date updated, you'll see when that rule was last modified. And I like this because if you have a lot of people in your company modifying and creating rules, this is a quick and easy way to keep track of that kind of information rather than having to dig it out of the client console. This just puts it all in one easy to access place. Below that is the AIE rule performance. And I want to cover this because out of those enabled AIE rules, this tracks how those rules are performing. Is there one that is using a lot of memory on the system? And if so, then you'll know exactly which rule you have to tune down, because if you don't tune it down, then the AI engine will suffer, and you might notice that you don't have any AIE rules firing as a result. And this is reflected in the spool file information section right below this. If you have rules that are performing poorly, as in they're not firing, then they will show up under data files, and we call those DAT files. And each file over 0 represents an AIE event that should have triggered an alarm, but it's stuck in the pipeline somewhere. So this is something that you would need to address with your SAM or through a support case. But this is a quick and easy way to track how these rules are performing. The last section I'd like to cover is the export, all the way at the bottom. And I like to first see if, I first like to change this to health check. If we want to do a health check, this gathers all the information you see reflected in your diagnostics tool in a PDF format. And you can upload that via email to your SAM directly or to the support case if that support engineer requires it for further investigation. And then I also like using logs because it doesn't matter if you are a distributed environment or an all-in-one. You can grab all of your logs from all of your endpoints and easily send them to your SAM or support engineer. It zips all of them for you, and you can save that zip locally. And if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you see max log age. Max log age allows you to set the logs you want to export, calculated in hours. I typically go to 24 hours, but it also depends on what I am looking for in the logs. If I know a specific time frame of something that occurred, then I would, set it to that time frame. It all depends, of course. And this concludes the demo portion of our presentation. I know this was pretty quick, but with the assistance of your SAM, we will gladly walk you through using this tool. Now that you got to know a little bit about us and our service, we would love to know more about you. If you are interested in learning more about our service, please reach out to your sales rep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.